Hello and welcome to my garden. I am going to walk you through and I'm going to show you 6 shrubs that I'm growing right now that are kind of at their peak. So it's certainly not a comprehensive list of plants in my garden, but it's 6 that I'm just kind of going to single out and make sure that you know about them because I think they're very worthy and very worth growing. So I hope that you will enjoy this peek and that maybe be inspired to try one of these yourselves. Here is one of my favorite hydrangeas. This is a Hydrangea Paniculata, so that's the genus and the species. This particular one is called Quickfire, and the reason it's called Quickfire is because it blooms. It's one of the first Hydrangea paniculatas to bloom. So they're just beginning, and as you can see, they're kind of ivory in color, maybe a cast of limey green, and really just kind of light and bright and pretty and vigorous. Look at that vigor. So this is its moment. It's been blooming now for, I'm going to say, a couple of weeks at least here in my Portland, Oregon, Zone 8 garden. But this thing just keeps on giving. So it is just beginning its show. It's going to, these flowers are going to age to a soft pink, and then they'll take on even more color. And then the foliage this fall will develop some really good fall foliage tones. So this is Hydrangea Paniculata Quickfire, and definitely a plant worth growing. I'm a huge fan of the oak leaf hydrangeas, and I am particularly fond of the ones that are a little bit smaller. So this is Hydrangea quercifolia, and this particular variety is called Sykes Dwarf. I've had it in my garden for, gosh, at least a dozen years, and it has remained relatively compact in size. There you can see it in context. There's a chair there. So you can see it's not huge, and I don't have to prune on it a ton to keep it at this size. So choosing the dwarf size cultivars if you're in a small garden is a really good idea. And again, this one's Sykes Dwarf, but there's also Munchkin is another one that's out there right now. It's quite small, and so that's something to keep in mind, is that you can go even smaller still. Munchkin, Peewee, just a number of different dwarf varieties. What you're going to find in your region might be different than what's out on the market in mine. So just pay attention to the final estimated size, and that'll help you hone in on the smaller ones. The other thing that happens with this plant, we can see it's blooming now, which has those enormous panicles, which is neat. It's got big, bold foliage. But this one, just like the Hydrangea Quickfire that we looked at just a little while ago, this is just the beginning, right? So from here, these flowers are going to develop some rosy tones, and so that's a continuing, continues to get quite interesting. And then in fall, this is just super reliable in terms of really putting on a very nice fall display. And this shrub here, it really kind of almost lends a real tropical vibe to the garden. It is a chef Lara, a hardy chef Lara, and it's called chef Lara Taiwanense. And I'll put the name there so you can kind of reference that. It is, I've had it in my garden for several years, but I did move it last year. I had it in a location that was just too sunny, too much of the hot afternoon blast, and so it was kind of burning a little bit. I think it would take sun, it just didn't take the type of sun I had it in. So now I've moved it where it doesn't get the afternoon blast, and it's doing much, much better. And I really just like it for its wonderful texture, its kind of tropical vibe, and it's been super strong and hardy for me. And it's not for colder zones. This is just going to be hardy to USDA zone 8, maybe 7.5. So Anyways, check it out, and if you have room, something I definitely recommend growing. I just really love it. And while we're talking about the hardy Scheffleras, why don't we look at this one as well? This is a Schefflera Delavane, and it's also evergreen, also suitable for the more, temperate gardens here on the in the Pacific Northwest. So it's hardy to USDA zone 8 for sure, probably 7.5. So I, again, just really love it for its presence and that big foliage. You can kind of, in context, you get a sense of how bold and tropical that looks. But this is a hardy Schefflera. It's Schefflera Delavane. And again, I got it as part of the Monrovia Hinckley collection. So I'll link to this as well. And I hope you kind of get a sense of what the plant might look like in a garden setting. It's so hard, isn't it, to visualize what something in a little 1 gallon or 2 gallon plant pot might look like in your garden. So there you go. And here's another one. This is a Fatsia called Camouflage. So that's Fatsia Japonica Camouflage. Also called a Japanese Aurelia, but that can be a little tricky because what makes this one special is that foliage color, right? And if I just call it Japanese Aurelia, you're not going to know. You might just go out and accidentally get the one that is not so cool, that's just the straight green. But so the camouflage is actually a very important part of the name, so take note of that. But look at how, again, it has that real kind of bold, exotic, tropical feel, and yet it is perfectly hardy. This is right outside my studio, looks great year-round, and surprisingly, this one has been taking a fair amount of sun for me. Most of the time, I consider them best suited for shady situations, but with adequate moisture and some protection from the absolute hottest sun, I think you can be successful growing it in, some sun. But it will take the shade in stride without a problem. Okay, this is a Kellycanthus, and it's called Aphrodite, and it's in my narrow side yard garden, so I'm having a real hard time showing you the whole scene because this is I just can't get back far enough to get perspective. But this is a Kellycanthus Aphrodite, also called Sweet Spire, and its foliage is just really very big. It is in full bloom right now, and there's a close-up of its flower, and it's very generous in bloom. So they're backing up a little bit. You can really get a sense of it. So this plant is relatively new to me. I've just been growing it here for a couple of years, and in a couple of client gardens. So and I'm really liking it. It's very similar to something that a lot of people might be growing, which is a Kellycanthus called Heartledge Red Wine, something like that. And I haven't grown that one, so this is the only one that I have direct experience with. So I can't compare it to that, but I would have to say that this seems like it's just much more vigorous. Its foliage is very handsome, kind of big and bold and glossy. And it is a deciduous shrub. I think it's somewhat flexible in terms of, how much sun it will take. I have seen some people growing them in a much shadier situation. Mine's in quite a bit of sun. So something to check out. So Kellycanthus Aphrodite. I hope you enjoyed getting a closer look at those 6 shrubs, and maybe you even got some ideas for how you might include them in your garden. If you enjoy this type of video, I'm wondering if you could do me a favor and just let me know what other types of topics you'd like to see me cover. I mean, are you interested in, tours around the garden, just looking at the lush and the pretty? Are you interested in something maybe a little bit more instructional, like more meaty garden design tips? Or perhaps garden tours or plant profiles, whatever it is, I would be very interested and curious to know what you would be interested in hearing more about.